Hey, Smorgasbord family, it's John Knopick here. I know a lot of you tuned in today to this very special episode, expecting a deep dive into the JFK assassination, filled up completely with all of the new declassified documents and everything else that's been going on over the last 60 years. And trust me, I was ready to go full Zapruder film on you guys as well, frame by frame, Grassy Knoll, Babushka Lady, and Umbrella Man and all. But unfortunately, sometimes the world just throws you a curveball, and you've got to pivot. Pivot! For those of you who know all about the TV show Friends, you guys will get the reference there. But this week, the news out of Canada and the global economy is just too wild to ignore, guys. So we're talking about a new prime minister, Mark Carney, and a tariff war between the United States and China that's got more drama than a wrestling pay-per-view. And believe me, I know all about wrestling pay-per-views. And here's the kicker. Carney's not exactly rolling out the red carpet for the United States. In fact, he's made it pretty clear that he's not a fan of the U.S. and the way the U.S. throws its weight around, especially when it comes to trade and tariffs between the United States and Canada. So that's why this episode today is going to be all about the tariff issue with the United States and China, the new prime minister over in Canada, and the relations between the United States and Canada that are currently not on the best, but trying to mend it as best as we can. So pour yourself a coffee, settle in, grab your fork and knife, and join me here on episode 5 of the Smorgasbord with John Knopick, Canadians, Tariffs, and Chaos. Oh my! That's for George Takei fans out there. But we're going to dive into the first segment here in just one moment. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is the Smorgasbord with John Knopick, and we'll be right back. Stick around. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@knopickventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. Okay, guys, welcome back to the Smorgasbord. I am, of course, John Knopick. Thank you guys very, very much for tuning in to this 5th episode. Can't believe we're already 5 episodes in, and we've dived into everything on these podcasts, from my upbringing to trauma and resilience to a little bit of wrestling to a little bit of everything. And now we're going to be diving into some political stuff. My intention, just so you guys know, for a little game planning here, is to eventually set it up so once a week, one episode per week until we decide we want to do more. One episode per week, we're going to be designating each week to a certain style of topic. Like, for example, we're going to have one week that's going to be completely set up for wrestling related themes and topics and discussion. One week's going to be all about political landscape and current events and things like that. Another week is going to be diving into conspiracy theories. We'll even have a week for you guys, the listeners, to give us some much needed feedback and help us design future episodes. Plus, we're eventually going to be rolling out some actual interviews in amongst those episodes as well, once I feel a little more confident and able to muster up the courage to actually start interviewing people and experts in those different fields. So a lot of things on the horizon, guys. Definitely stick around, stay tuned, tell all your friends, get us some more viewers and feedback and all those goody things out there. But let's get into this week's episode. Again, it's called Canadians, Tariffs, and Chaos. Oh my. Now let's start with the big headline, shall we? Canada has, in case you haven't been living under a rock and weren't exactly aware of what was going on in the world, Canada actually has a new prime minister. And it's not your typical politician, much the same way the United States went that exact same route in 2016 and again here in 2024, even though in 2020 we all know what happened with that election. Now, this non-politician's name is Mark Carney. Now, if you're not a finance nerd, you might be thinking, who? But let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're at a family reunion and everyone's arguing about who should take over the family business, or in my wife's family's case, The Sopranos. Suddenly, your cousin Mark, who's been off running the finances for some of the biggest companies in the world, strolls into the family get-together, and everyone just kind of stops and stares at him like, what are you doing here? That's basically what happened in Canada this year. But here's is what sets Carney apart, and it's absolutely 100% making waves. He's not shy about his skepticism towards the United States, as you can be well aware, because if you've been paying attention to what's going on up there to our neighbors to the north, you can definitely see some fractures on both sides of the aisle here. He said more than once that Canada needs to stop playing second fiddle to its southern neighbor. Good luck with that. He's openly criticized U.S. trade tactics, calling them Canada's or short-sighted and damaging to allies. In his first press conference as Prime Minister, he even said, and I quote, Canada's future will not be dictated by Washington's whims. That's not a good way to start off your tenure there, Mr. Carney. It's a pretty bold stance, actually, especially for a country that's so economically tied to the United States. It's not even funny. Now, Carney's not just any cousin, though. This is also a guy who's not just run the Bank of Canada, but also the Bank of England. You heard me right. The Bank of England. It's like being the head coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs and Manchester United at the same time. He's got a Harvard degree, a doctorate from Oxford, and a reputation for being the calmest guy in the room when things get dicey. He sounds, believe it or not, in certain aspects, he absolutely sounds like our current leader right now. When the going gets tough, he's cool and calm under pressure, and cool and calm as a cucumber, so to speak. Remember the 2008 financial crisis? Some of you might, some of you might not. Carney was actually the guy who helped Canada dodge the worst part of that. Then, when Brexit, the exit strategy of the UK, happened over there, he was actually over there steadying the ship at the Bank of England, making sure they were able to ride the waves and not get totally toppled by everything that was going down in the UK's political landscape. The Financial Times even called him the world's most influential central banker. Those are big, big, big words and big shoes for him to fill. So, how did this guy end up exactly as prime minister? Well, after nearly a decade in power, that Justin Trudeau, we all know how amazing of a guy he is, stepped down earlier this year. The Liberals were looking for a fresh face, someone with credibility, unlike our Liberals here, who put the most major of wackadoos at the forefront of their ticket, and you've seen what's happened because of that. And Carney actually did fit the bill for those Liberals up there in Canada. But here's the twist. Carney's not a career politician, just like our leader right now. He's a technocrat, a numbers guy, and now he's in the political ring where the punches are a lot less predictable than the world of finance. So if you think about it, in kind of a weird way, it'd be kind of like Elon was actually president, because obviously he's not a career politician, but in the tech space, he is like exceptional at what he does. And also with Carney's open distrust of U.S. motives, Carney's already set a new tone for Canada's foreign policy. He's been quick to remind Canadians that relying on the United States absolutely has its risks, especially when Washington's priorities can change overnight. He's even floated the idea of building stronger ties with Europe and Asia to reduce Canada's dependence on American markets. Now, let's pause for a second, if you indulge me. Imagine that you're Carney, stepping into the Prime Minister's office for the very first time. You've got a country up there that's tired, anxious, and clamoring and just begging for answers. The economy is definitely not on stable terms, very shaky. The climate debate is absolutely raging, and every move you make is going to be under a very high-powered microscope. Would you feel excited? Would you feel terrified? Maybe skited, scared and excited combined? Patent pending. Would you be willing to risk a fight with the United States, your big brothers to the south, if you thought it was the right thing for your Canadian brethren? And in my estimation, you got to be very cautious, especially with who's in power now. Now, if this was the old regime, the one who shouldn't have been in there in 2020 in the first place, he might have had better luck with what he was trying to push. But because we've got Trump back in office, yeah, he's got to be way more cautious with the way he approaches things when it comes to United States negotiations and relations. Now, his first big move as prime minister, you ask? Well, he scrapped the consumer carbon tax. That's a huge deal up in Canada, especially out west where the tax was about as popular as a snowstorm in July. Instead, what he did was he kept the industrial carbon tax, which targets big polluters but leaves regular folks off the hook, which is a good thing. Supporters say it's a relief for families struggling with high costs, but environmental groups are furious, warning that it could set back Canada's climate goals. Makes sense. Now, let's switch a little bit and talk about the economy up there. And now inflation in Canada is sitting at about roughly 4.2%. Not as bad as some places, but still a real squeeze for a lot of people. Food prices are up, rent is up, and the Canadian dollar has dropped about 6% against the United States dollar since January. So quite a bit in just the last 4 months. That means, excuse me, everything from electronics to groceries is more expensive if it is imported. Excuse me. Unemployment is also unfortunately up there as well, now at 6.1%, with manufacturing and agriculture taking the biggest hits. What is Carney to do? What is his game plan? What's his response to this? Well, he's launched what he calls a Team Canada approach. He's brought together premiers from every province, Indigenous leaders as well, and business executives on top of all of that to try and find a way through this mess to get out of the thick of it. He's also promised to invest $10 billion in green infrastructure and clean tech, aiming to create 100,000 new jobs by as soon as 2027. But unfortunately for him, the political landscape is very, very rough. The Liberals are hanging on with a minority government. The Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre are hammering Carney left and right on affordability and energy. And the NDP and the Bloc, they are actually pushing for more action on housing and climate. Now, guys, let's get real for a second, shall we? If you were in Carney's shoes at this point in time, would you risk, with all of that going on, would you risk angering the United States to stand up for Canadian interests, knowing everything else that's going on in your country? Or would you try to keep the peace, even if it meant swallowing some very, very tough pills? And what about that Team Canada approach that he has? Do you think it's possible to even get all of the premiers, business leaders, and Indigenous voices all pulling in the same direction? It's a little far-fetched. I would even go as far as to say it's very political wishful thinking, if you think about it. Now, Carney's approval rating, it did start strong, 58% just in March alone, according to Angus Reid, but it's already slipped down just 2 months, less than 2 months, to 51% as the economic pain really starts to set in. Western premiers are very happy about the carbon tax rollback, as we mentioned before, but environmentalists are calling it a very, very, very fierce betrayal. Chamber of Commerce likes Carney's focus on stability, but warns that trade disruptions could derail everything. Now let's dig a little deeper, if we will, here. Carney's background is fascinating to me. He grew up in the Northwest Territories, so he's no stranger to the challenges of rural and northern life, as the majority of the province up there deals with. He's worked in the private sector at Goldman Sachs, as well as in the public sector at the highest levels, as we mentioned, Bank of Canada, Bank of England. He's seen the world from boardrooms and from the roots of Canada, so he's covered all ends of the spectrum. Now, that does give him a hugely unique perspective, but it also means he's got a lot of expectations to manage. And here's where I want to bring you guys in, listeners. Imagine once more time that you're in Carney's shoes. You've got the world's eyes on you, you've got a minority government, and you've got a country that's feeling the pinch. What I want you guys to think about, and let me know your comments, do you double down on climate action, or do you try to ease the cost of living for regular folks? Which way do you go? Is Carney's technocratic style what Canada really needs right now, or is he too much of a numbers guy for the rough and tumble world of politics, especially Canadian politics? And with his own open skepticism of the United States, not being shy about that, is he protecting Canada's interests, Or is he risking too much by literally poking the bear? And would you guys scrap the carbon tax? Would you guys have scrapped it? Or would you guys have kept it going? And if you would have kept it going, would you have doubled down on climate action, even if it meant higher costs at the pump for people? Hit me up on social media at smorgasbordjk, get them all switched over, or john at canopicventures.com, or send me a voice memo. I want to hear your take on this. I want to know what you guys think. Give me your thoughts as if you were Carney. How would you handle all of the crises going on up there right now? What would be your blueprint for getting them out of the sticky wicket that they're currently in? Now, let's not forget one more thing, guys. This is not just about policy, it's about trust. Because if you don't got the trust, you're never going to make it. Canadians are looking for someone that can steer that ship through very rough waters, getting choppier by the day. Will Carney be that leader? Will the pressures of politics be too much, even for a world-class banker? Now, guys, we're going to take a little break here. As again, taking a break here after our first segment. Next segment we're going to be diving into is going to be dealing with the economic crossroads up there in our neighbors to the north up in Canada regarding tariffs, trade, and turbulence. So I'm going to take another quick little break here. We'll be right back here on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll be right back after this ad break. Stick around. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK, or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@canopicventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. All right, guys, welcome back to the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. Thank you guys so much for tuning in wherever you're listening to this at, or even if you're viewing it on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. Greatly appreciate it. And again, I appreciate all feedback that you guys want to send my way on all social media channels. It's at SmorgasbordJK, or shoot me an old school email, john@canopicadventures.com. Let's get into the weeds on the economy, shall we? Because this is where things get really interesting and honestly a little scary. Now, Canada's economy, as I've mentioned, is facing a perfect storm right now. You've got U.S. tariffs. You've got Chinese retaliation, because they're not happy either. And a whole lot of global uncertainty all coming together to create a nice cornucopia of fear and unease. Now, this is where Carney's attitude towards the United States really comes into play. Unlike some of his predecessors like Trudeau, he's not afraid to call out Washington's America First policies. In fact, he's gone on record saying that, quote, Canada can't afford to be bullied by our biggest trading partner, being the United States. That's a very bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him. Dodgeball reference. But it is a bold move, especially when you consider that about 75% or so of Canadian exports still go into the United States. Let's start with the United States in January. President Trump, yes, he's back in the White House, guys, for those of you who've been living under a rock, and we're very happy to have him back. He slapped a universal 25% tariff on all Canadian imports. Now, if you do a little digging and you look at some numbers out there in the current landscape, you'll actually see that Canada has been putting tariffs on the United States for quite a long time, and those numbers are exceptionally higher than what we're trying to tariff them. So it's not as if this tariff situation is a brand new concept. It's been around for quite a while, and we've been getting hurt a lot worse than we're currently in the process of hurting them. Now, the official reason for Trump imposing that universal 25% tariff on Canadian imports, you ask? National security and unfair trade practices, which ties back into how Canada has been tariffing the crap out of us. But let's be real, guys. It's always going to be, with Trump in office, and we love this part, it's always going to be about putting America first and squeezing Canada for concessions, because they've been trying to squeeze us. Carney's response to that? Well, it was swift and it was sharp. He called the tariffs an act of economic aggression and fired back with his own increased tariffs on United States goods such as steel, aluminum, agricultural products, you name it. And the result? How well did that work out for him? Well, Canadian exports to the United States have dropped 18% in the first quarter of 2025 compared to last year. Gee, why could that be? That's not just a number, guys. That's factories cutting shifts, farmers losing markets, and small towns feeling the pinch. And I'm going to go ahead and break that down for you guys. Imagine that you're a factory worker over in, let's say, Windsor, Ontario, a place I've been. It's a very beautiful city. You've been making auto parts for years, maybe decades, your entire life, or at least your adult life, if not more than that, especially if it's a family-owned business, has been tied to that making those auto parts, and your livelihood depends on it. Suddenly, your plant manager decides to call a meeting. Orders are down, costs are up, and layoffs are coming. It's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. Or, let's give you another example. Let's say you're a farmer in Saskatchewan, totally different province, watching your canola crops rot because there's nowhere to sell it. Where is it going to go? You have nowhere to sell it because people aren't buying it because of the high cost to import it down here. So you're stuck watching it just wilt away. See, these aren't just numbers, guys. They're real people, real families, real communities, real life situations that are affecting every single aspect of the human existence, especially up in Canada. And now it's not just the United States. It's not just China, which used to be a huge market for Canadian canola, pork, and seafood. That's hit back with their own tariffs. Canola exports to China, for example, which were worth 2.7 billion with a B dollars a year, are expected now to fall below 1.5 billion by the end of 2025. That's almost a 50% decrease. Seafood exports are down 30% since the new tariffs hit, and that's devastating the fishers over in the Atlantic side of Canada, on the far east side. The government has announced $2 billion in relief for these affected industries, but everyone knows that that's just a Band-Aid when you're dealing with an amputation. It's not going to be the cure. It's not going to plug the leak. And while we're mentioning seafood and canola and other things like that, let's talk about grocery bills for a moment. Food prices in Canada are up 7% year over year, with, again, the big ones being canola oil, pork, and seafood seeing the largest of those jumps. The housing market, it's cooling off a little bit up there. Average home prices in Toronto are still a staggering over $1.1 million for an average home in Canada. That is just insanity. But the weirdest part is, and the most shocking part, they're actually down 4% from last year. So you were closer to, over 2 million for on an average before then. The Bank of Canada is keeping interest rates high, though, at 5.25% to fight inflation. But unfortunately, that's making it harder for people to be able to afford homes or invest in new businesses and try to get things back going. Now, Carney's government is trying to find any new avenues, any new streams, any new markets, Europe, Japan, even India. But those deals, unfortunately, are not done overnight. They take time, and they can't fully replace the United States and China, the two biggest players on the planet, obviously. The conservatives are saying that Carney's being way too confrontational with the United States. I can see that, especially with who we have as our leader. While the NDP wants more support for its workers and a windfall tax on companies profiting from inflation. Now, public opinion on this, you ask? Well, it's split. The 47% of people out there support Carney's tough stance, while 42% want a more conciliatory approach, according to Ipsos, and 11% couldn't be bothered to be polled to them. Now, I'm going to pause again and give it back to you guys here. If you were in charge, knowing what you know now about the prices and inflation and percentages and things, would you stand up to the United States and China, or would you try to make peace, even if it meant, again, tough compromises? Do you guys really think that, Canadians could really diversify its trade? Or are we just too tied to are you guys just too tied to your giant neighbors down here? And what about the people caught in the middle? What about them? How do we make sure they don't get left behind? Another solid question that needs to be answered. And finally, let's get into some specifics. The auto sector is a beautiful example. Ontario and Quebec both rely on cross-border supply chains. When tariffs go up, of course, costs go up, and suddenly it's cheaper to make cars elsewhere. We've already seen the production cuts and temporary layoffs at major plants. And guys, it's not just cars. Everything from lumber to maple syrup, it's all being caught in the crossfire. And also, let's not forget those lovely, lovely ripple effects. When one sector takes a hit, it affects everybody as a whole. Truck drivers, warehouse workers, even the local diner where the workers grab their lunches. It's a domino effect, and it's happening, unfortunately, in real time. Now, if you guys happen to have a story about tariffs or how maybe trade wars have affected you or your business, or you're trying to get a startup going but you're not able to for reasons tied to these, I want to hear about it. Drop me a line on all social media platforms at smorgasbordjk. Shoot me an email, john@canopicventures.com, or if you want to and you feel the need, send me a voice memo. Again, this is your smorgasbord, guys. I'm giving you the menu. You guys get to gobble it up. And if you want to give me some menu ideas as well, give me your feedback, I will be more than happy to take that and run with it. Now we're going to take another little break here, guys. We're going to be switching away from Canada and heading down here to the United States to start talking about the United States-China tariff war and the global power struggle that's going along with it. We're going to take a little break. We're going to start that segment next here. You're listening to the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll be right back after this quick ad break. Stick around. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK, or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@canopicventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. All right, guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. I, of course, am John Knopick. We've been discussing the Canadian turmoil situation with the new Prime Minister Carney up there, along with their tariff and financial struggles. But now we're going to take a little shift here and we're going to zoom out from Canada and talk about the main event that's on the world stage right now from a financial standpoint. And that is, of course, the ongoing tariff war between the United States and China. And of course, guys, this is not just about Canada being squeezed. This is a global power struggle that's been building and building and building for years. The United States-China trade war really kicked off back in 2018 during Trump's first term in office. It all started when Trump started slapping tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars in Chinese goods. Now, there was a brief truce in 2020, but by 2023 and 2024, last year, things were starting to heat up once again. And of course, as things like this go, both sides were accusing one another of unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and as well as currency manipulation. Now let's fast forward to this year, 2025, and the United States has expanded tariffs to cover almost all Chinese imports, with rates ranging from 10% all the way to 50% on things like electronics, steel, and even solar panels. So yeah, that's right, guys. Even solar panels are being taxed or tariffed and have their prices jacked up. Now, let's talk numbers, shall we? United States imports from China have dropped from $540 billion in 2018 down to $370 billion in 2024. So it's a drop of about a little over 30%. Chinese imports from the United States have fallen from 155 billion down to 110 billion. So again, it's about a 30% drop. The average tariff rate on Chinese goods entering the United States is now roughly around 25.9%, up from just 3.1% in 2017. So quite a bit of a jump. Now, China, of course, they're not going to sit idly by and allow this to happen. They've hit back with tariffs on the United States, tariffing things such as our agricultural products, our automobiles, as well as our technology. And they've restricted exports of critical minerals like rare earths, stuff you need in everything from smartphones to electric cars, things that are a critical component. Now, you're going to ask, what is the impact of all of this? What does this all mean? Well, for American consumers, prices for electronics, as you can tell if you've been shopping anywhere, Best Buy, Walmart, Target, you name it, prices for electronics, appliances, and even some clothing are up 5 to 12%. Farmers in the mighty Midwest, like where I'm from in Iowa, have lost, unfortunately, an estimated $28 billion in exports to China since 2018, with soybeans, pork, and corn taking the most gigantic of hits. Now, some United States manufacturers, they've actually benefited from less Chinese competition, but a lot of them, unfortunately, rely on Chinese components, like those rare earth things we mentioned earlier, so their costs have gone up as well. And again, as I had said before, China is just, they're not sitting back on this, not in the slightest. They're investing heavily in domestic tech as well as manufacturing, trying to become even more self-reliant than they already are, which is a scary prospect to think about. GDP growth in China has slowed to 4.5% in 2024, down from 6.1% in 2019, according to the World Bank. Now, Chinese companies are moving production to places like Vietnam and Mexico, as we all know. We've been hearing the articles and the video clips about what Trump's planning on doing if, they try to import, Mexico tries to import those vehicles into the United States that were made in China. Not going to end well. But yeah, they've tried to do it in Vietnam as well as in Mexico to dodge the tariffs of the United States, but they've come to find that that's really been a lot more expensive and as well as disruptive. Politically, as I said, Trump says the tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs and counter China's economic aggression. Critics, including a lot of U.S. business groups and economists, say tariffs are trying to say that tariffs are basically a tax on consumers and really haven't changed China's behavior. But if you look at it, tariffs are not going to be something that you'll see the immediate positive impacts on. They are going to take time for that to really show their true colors. Even the World Trade Organization has ruled that some U.S. tariffs violate international rules, but enforcement is weak. Now, there are gray areas in there, so it's not like they're intentionally skirting things. The IMF estimates that the trade war has shaved 0.5% off of the global GDP growth since 2018, and that's quite a significant number. Now, it's not just the United States and China here, guys. Other countries like the European Union, Japan, Australia, they're all caught in the middle of this battle going on between the two big superpowers. They're facing pressure to pick sides or risk their own trade relationships. Basically, if you're not going with mama or dada, you're going to get blitzed either way by one or the other. In 2025, the United States has imposed new export controls on advanced semiconductors and AI tech, again, citing national security. China, how did they respond to that? Well, they responded by restricting imports of those rare earth elements and other critical minerals. Talks between the two sides, unfortunately, have stalled quite a bit. And both governments are blaming each other for the impasse, as they will do. Neither one of them wants to own up and take responsibility. And that's right. Let's take another little trip into the multiverse, if you will. Let's say you're a business owner in Germany this time, or Brazil, or even India. Do you pick a side? Do you go with the United States? Do you go with China? Or do you try to be like Swiss, the Swiss, and stay neutral and just fingers crossed, hoping for the best? What happens if the world really does split into rival economic blocks with different rules and different standards? Does that make us safer, or does it just make us more divided? And while you're thinking about that, think about this. Are tariffs actually working, or are they just making everything more expensive for everyone? Again, as I mentioned, it takes time for tariffs to really show benefit. At the beginning, it's going to seem like a pinch, but in the long run, it becomes more of a benefit than a hindrance. Now, how should other countries navigate this rivalry? How are the other countries? How are they going to pick sides? Are they going to pick a side? Will they even pick a side? Are they just going to stay neutral? And what happens if the world really does split? You know, if you're listening from outside North America, if you happen to be tuning in from one of these other countries, I want your perspectives as well, guys. I want to know what you guys feel from the spots outside of the States here. How is this trade war playing out in your country? How are you guys being affected by what's going on between the United States and China? Are you guys seeing higher prices where you are? Job losses, new opportunities? What are you guys feeling where you're listening in at? Let me know at Smorgasbord JK or John at CanoppicVentures.com. We're going to take another quick little break here, and when we come back here on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick, we're going to dive into the human side of tariffs and how they affect real people and real businesses. This is the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. I am John Knopick. We'll be right back after this quick ad break. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll be right back. Stick around. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@canoppicventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. All right, guys, welcome back to the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. I am John Knopick. Thank you guys very, very much for tuning in wherever you're listening to your podcast, be it Spotify, be it Apple, Amazon, iHeart, wherever you may be listening. Or if you're catching me on YouTube, hope you're enjoying the show. Now let's bring it down to earth for a minute. With all of these numbers and all of these policies, the tariffs, the trade wars, the political maneuvering, the posturing, the male genitalia showing, trying to say mine's bigger than yours, et cetera, et cetera. What they don't realize, I'm sure they realize, but when they're so blinded by their tunnel vision, they don't truly understand, is the fact that they have all of this has real impacts on real people, both in Canada as well as around the globe. Now, I'm going to go back to the Canadian farmers again. Out on the prairies, canola and pork are facing bankruptcy, unfortunately, as exports to China dry up and show no sign of recovery. The Canadian Federation of Agriculture, it actually says that 12% of family farms are at risk of closure this year. Nearly over 10% of family farms are at risk for being shut down. That's not just a statistic, guys. Unfortunately, that is families losing their livelihoods, small towns losing their main employers and having to shutter up other businesses, and a way of life directly under threat by all of this going on. Fishers in Atlantic Canada are seeing those incomes, as I mentioned, drop by 20 to 30% as Chinese demand for lobster and crab collapses. And up in Ontario and Quebec and Manitoba and even in Alberta, factory workers are facing layoffs as auto part plants are cutting shifts or in some cases just shutting down entirely. You know, and even still, and it's not just Canada, guys. The United States down here, our farmers have lost billions in exports, leading to a spike in farm bankruptcies in the Midwest. I have quite a few people that I know who had farms that were thriving, and now they're barely able to stay afloat because of everything that's been going on with this. So it is hitting them exceptionally hard. And it's not just them. Us here, us consumers are feeling the pinch. We're paying more from everything from washing machines to smartphones to gas to eggs, you name it. We're getting blitzed ourselves. Some United States manufacturers, a very, very small, minute amount, have actually benefited from the Chinese competition, but again, they mainly rely on those Chinese components and they're struggling with the higher costs. Now, you're saying to yourself, well, we know about the United States and Canada, but how is this affecting China? Are they getting hit too? Well, in China, exporters are shifting production to Southeast Asia, but a lot of small businesses over there have closed as well. Chinese consumers, just like us here, they're paying more for United States goods, and some American brands have lost complete market share. The government is trying its hardest and constantly pouring money into this domestic innovation, but growth has slowed and they're starting to feel the pressure finally, and it's really starting to take a hit. Globally, companies are de-risking, as they call it, by moving production out of China. But of course, that's not something that comes cheap. It's very expensive as well as time consuming. The cost of shipping, logistics, it's gone up dramatically as well, and that adds to inflation everywhere. Some countries like Vietnam, Mexico, Japan, they're seeing new investment, but others are struggling to adapt. And then we can't forget the social and political fallout now, can we, guys? Rising prices and job losses are fueling political anger and polarization. It's made the party lines here even more deep and more separated. When we're trying to bring the country together, this is doing the exact opposite. Populist parties are gaining ground by promising to protect jobs and stand up to China. International cooperation is breaking down, though, too, with more countries tuning to protectionism and, in some cases, just saying, screw it, going it alone. Now, if let's say for a second, let's say you guys are listening to this while you're driving to work or you're on the subway commuting in to your job, wherever you're having to do your 9 to 5. Or let's say, you're getting ready to feed your family for the night. You're set up around, you're getting ready to set up around the dinner table and you're listening to this episode. Or, let's say you've had a really stressful day at work and you're just trying to unwind. So you're tuning into me, spouting off my diatribe about the current economical situation around the globe. Thank you for tuning in, by the way. Um, have you guys noticed in all aspects? Have you guys noticed that your grocery bill has slowly started creeping up a bit, even though it went down for a little bit, but now it's starting to creep up again? Maybe because of that, you've had to put off a big purchase. Like you wanted to go on a family trip somewhere, or, you wanted to finally be able to buy your forever home, or, you wanted to start your own business, but you're having to put that off. Um, you know, or maybe some of you are at home struggling and concerned about your job and making sure you even have something to go to the next day. These, again, all of this, guys, these aren't just headlines. They're not just attention grabbing phrases. It's real, everyday struggles that's affecting all humans on the planet. And, you know, how do we balance these national interests with need for global cooperation? How do you make it both work? How do you get the scales to even out? You know, by doing this, by for the people in power by doing this? Are you guys forcing ordinary people to pay the price for your power struggles? Because if that is the case, you're really not going to be able to gain the trust back of your constituents or those that you've sworn to protect. You're not going to earn that back. And if in some cases, if it's an election coming up like next year during the midterms, you could very well lose your spot altogether. You know, and while you're thinking about that, think about this. What can be done to support workers in communities caught in the crossfire? How do you shield them? How do you keep them afloat? How do you keep what is the cornerstone of what makes these countries what they are? How do you keep them afloat? How do you protect them? Now, if you guys have a story about how tariffs, trade wars, again, as I said, you have any stories about how things have affected you, I want to hear them. I need the feedback, guys. I want to know what your thoughts are on the current landscape of the world from an economic standpoint, as well as from a political standpoint. Let me know your thoughts at Smorgasbord JK on all social medias or John at CanoppicVentures.com. Again, guys, this is your smorgasbord as well. These plates are being filled by your meat just as well as they're being filled by mine. So let me know what you guys think. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going. Let's build a dialogue about this. Let's see if we can brainstorm some ideas that we could possibly pass on to our local congressmen or something. Even though they probably don't listen, but you never know. But we're gonna take another little break, guys. We need a little recharge here. The next segment we're gonna be diving into is gonna be the one about the road ahead. Let's look into the crystal ball, shall we? Solutions, risks, what to watch for. Let's take a deep dive into what's to come. All right. We're gonna be back here in just one moment. We're gonna take another quick ad break. This is the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. I am John Knopick. Thank you guys very, very much for tuning in, and we'll be right back here after this quick ad break. Stick around. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@canoppicventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. All right, guys, welcome back. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is the Smorgasbord. I am John Knopick. Really greatly appreciate you guys listening wherever you're getting your podcasts from. Or if you're watching me on YouTube, thank you guys very much for tuning in on here as well. So now, as I was saying, let's look at the road ahead. Let's dive into the crystal ball. Let's hop in our DeLorean, fire up the Mr. Coffee Maker and the flux capacitor, and let's say to ourselves, guys, where do we go from here? Both Canada and the world, we're at a crossroads right now. We're at an impasse. The choices made in the next few years are going to shape the future for a very long time and possibly for generations to come. In the case of Canada, Mark Carney's government is betting on economic diversification, green investment, and a Team Canada approach, as we've mentioned. They're trying to focus on country first. Success for them will depend on finding new markets, making sure that their workers are completely 100% supported, as well as keeping the public trust. Got to have the balance of both of those. Now, the next federal election, guys, it's actually less than 2 years away. Unlike here, they do theirs a lot more frequently. And that political landscape at this point in time is very, very volatile. So, unlike down here in the States, where you have the 4 years to try and stabilize things and get things more on a positive track, up there, their railroad tracks is much, much shorter. Now, if Carney can't deliver his results that he's been promising, voters might turn to more populist alternatives, and I wouldn't be shocked if they did. Looking at the United States and China side of things, this tariff war unfortunately shows no sign of ending. Even though President Xi and President Trump have promised to embark and take on more negotiations and try to hammer out a deal, it hasn't quite come to fruition as of yet. There were some threats that President Xi was going to do, but after speaking with Trump and things, he rolled back on those, as he rightfully should have. Both sides, as you can tell, they're digging in. They're digging their heels in. They're not going to let up on this. And the risk of escalation into technology, finance, or at the worst aspect, military confrontation, it's real, guys. It's very real. And it's a scary prospect to think about military confrontation with China, something we do not ever want to get involved in. The global economy, in addition to what Canada and the United States and China are dealing with, the global economy as a whole, it's at risk also of fragmenting into rival blocks with new rules and alliances. The IMF, the World Bank, they're calling for renewed international cooperation. Kumbaya. Why can't we be friends? All hold hands and let's all get on the same page. Unfortunately for them, the trust in making sure that that becomes a real thing is very, very, very low. Climate change, pandemics, both lab made and otherwise, Wuhan, and technological disruption are adding new layers of complexity, making it even harder to accomplish those goals. Ordinary people, workers, farmers, consumers, small business owners, they're demanding solutions, as they should, not just slogans. Stop blowing smoke up people's backsides and give us real results, real, tangible, positive outcomes. And while we're here in our nice, warm, comfy DeLorean, let's go a little bit further into the future, shall we? Will Carney's technocratic approach win over Canadians? Can we see him winning over the hearts of all Canadians up there? Or are voters going to just say, screw this, you're not giving us anything, it's all claptrap, not Borderlands, and they look for something different, different populist alternatives? Can the United States and China finally find a way to coexist, something we need? Or are we heading for a new Cold War, which would be very, very bad, especially because China is more powerful than what Russia was back then? That would be very scary to think about. And especially with having a young child, you don't want to think about a world like that. And how will other countries from the EU to India, Brazil, Japan, etc., how are they going to navigate this new era of uncertainty? What are their futures? What do their futures hold because of everything that's going on? Again, I need to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you've hopped into your DeLorean, your TARDIS, and gone into the future. What policies or strategies do you see in the crystal ball that can help countries adapt to a more divided world? What routes do they have to take to make things more manageable and livable from a world standpoint? Do you guys think that there's hope for a new era of cooperation, or are we unfortunately stuck in an endless cycle of conflict and competition? And while you're at that thinking aspect, think about this. How can individuals and communities build resilience in the face of global shocks? Shocks, not shots, like the pandemic, shocks. How can they build that resilience? How can they insulate themselves from this kind of stuff going on? Let me know what you think, guys. I want to hear your thoughts and your opinions. At Smorgasbord JK or John at CanonicVentures.com. Let me know what you guys think. Taking one more quick ad break, guys. Last segment of the episode, as we normally do here on every episode of the Smorgasbord with John Knopick, we're going to be diving into your comments and your thoughts. So stick around. This is the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. I'm John Knopick. Thank you guys very, very much for tuning in wherever you're listening in from. Or if you're on YouTube, thank you guys for catching me on here as well. And we'll be right back with our final segment. Stick around. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@knopickventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. All right, Smorgasbord family, thank you guys so much for sticking around and tuning into this episode. I am, of course, John Knopick. I hope you guys are feeling your stomachs getting fuller and fuller by the moment as we feed you more information regarding the goings on in the world, especially from the Canadian turmoil in political states to the United States and China having their tariff wars to global uncertainty. Hopefully, you're getting a nice big heaping helping of what we serve here on the Smorgasbord. Before we wrap up, of course, as always, my final segment of every episode, the one I love the most, is going to revolve around our listeners, you beautiful people out there in the social media universe, giving me your thoughts and feedback. Because, of course, this show is not just about me talking into the void. The void, especially if you went and saw Thunderbolts like I did over the weekend, you now know the void is not a place that you want to be or that you want to deal with. But it's not just about me talking to the void here week in and week out. It's about building a community, which is what I'm struggling to do and trying to do as best I can. Sharing stories, learning from each other, riffing, and just, trying to get fresh perspectives on things going on, not only around the world with current events, but things in wrestling, things in conspiracy theories, and other topics that you guys, are interested in or just want to talk about. I, of course, in this episode here, put out the call for your thoughts on Canada's new leadership, the tariff wars, as I mentioned, between the United States and China, and how all of this is affecting your lives. And of course, you guys actually delivered. And again, I am very, very appreciative of all of the feedback that I have been receiving so far. And again, continue to send in the feedback even after this episode airs. I still want to know your thoughts. I still want to know what your future, what you feel the future is going to look like, because I can always come back to this on future episodes as things progress. So let's dig into some of your comments, questions, and other hot takes, shall we? We're going to start this round with a message from Lisa up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Hey, Lisa, thank you very much for tuning in. And I bet you, if you're a sports fan up there, I bet you're absolutely loving what happened last night with the Winnipeg Jets and the St. Louis Blues, and how that amazing Game 7 ended in double overtime with the Jets pulling it out after being down 2 goals with less than a minute to go, catching up, tying the game with less than 2 seconds to go, and then in double overtime about 15 minutes in, sending home the game winner. So hopefully you're having fun up there in Winnipeg. Lisa writes, John, I'm a single mom working 2 jobs, and I've definitely noticed my grocery bill going up. I used to buy salmon once a week. Ooh, love me some salmon. Delicious. Especially if you get it from the coast, you get the fresh salmon. Oh, so good. But unfortunately, now it's just too expensive. I'm worried about what happens if prices keep rising. Do you think the government is doing enough to help people like me? Thank you very much for your question, Lisa. I appreciate that very, very much. And of course, Lisa, you are not alone. Food prices are up across the board, and seafood is, as I've mentioned in the earlier segments on the show today, seafood has been hit especially hard by these tariffs and trade disruptions. The government's relief packages are a start, but as we've discussed, they're more of a band-aid than a cure for what's truly going on. What I myself would love to see is a longer-term plan that addresses both affordability and supply chain resilience. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Maybe more support for the local producers as well, or even incentivize grocery stores to keep their prices down. Give them a little kickback for keeping the numbers down to affordable levels for consumers. What do you guys think? Do you think you've changed your shopping habits because of rising prices? Let me know. Next up, we've got a memo from Raj in Toronto, another beautiful city that I've been to. Went up into the CN Tower. Loved going over there. Very clean city. Raj says, Hey, John, I work in the auto sector and things are tense. Yeah, I can see that. My plant has already cut 1 shift and there's talk of more layoffs. I get that Canada needs to stand up for itself, according to our new prime minister, but I'm worried about my job. Is there any hope for workers like us? Raj, I hear you. We all hear you. The auto sector is right at the heart of this trade storm. It's not just about tariffs, it's about the whole supply chain, from steel to semiconductors. Now, I think the key is going to be for the government up there to invest in retaining and support for its workers and to push trade deals that protect those Canadian jobs because they're exceptionally valuable. But it's absolutely tough, no question. And, if anybody out there, if you guys are listening and you've been through a layoff or a tough transition, what helped get you through it? What helped you get back on your feet during those uncertain times? Let me know. Let me share your tips and stories. Give Raj and I some ammunition to go off of. Here's an email we've got from Sophie in Montreal. We're getting a bunch of Canadians today, which is cool. John, I'm actually a university student and studying environmental science. Oh, that's a pretty hefty trade to go into. Yeah, very, very hefty. I'm frustrated that the carbon tax was scrapped for consumers. Now, I get that people are struggling, but isn't climate change an even bigger threat? Depends on who you ask. How do we balance short-term pain with long-term goals? Sophie, that is the $65 million Canadian question. Balancing affordability with climate action is one of the hardest challenges any government faces because there is climate change, but not to the level that some fearmongers tend to push. Maybe the answer is a more targeted approach by helping those who need it most, while at the same time keeping those incentives for green choices. So again, with jobs, go do things more on a green scale, giving them kickbacks for that as well. Or maybe it's about investing in clean tech. Think about that. Clean tech, it would help create jobs and cut emissions at the same time. Again, two birds, one stone. What do you guys think? Is there a way to have both a strong economy and a healthy planet? I would seriously hope so. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts on that. And we've got a comment here from Mike in Niagara Falls on the United States side. And Mike says, as a United States citizen, I'm actually glad Carney scrapped the carbon tax. Where I'm at here, it was killing us at the pump. But I'm worried about what happens if the United States and China continue to keep fighting like children who don't know how to get along. Are we just stuck in the middle forever? Mike, you are speaking for a lot of folks, not just on New York and the upper east side of the United States, but as well as for people over there in Western Canada. The feeling of being caught between two giants is very real and very, very concerning. I think Canada, as well as the United States, best bet is to keep pushing for diversified trade and to build alliances with the other countries facing the same challenges. Get together with those who are struggling the same way you are and see if you can build a coalition. But of course, guys, it's not going to be easy and it takes time. If you've got ideas on how Canada and maybe even to some extent the United States can stand on its own 2 feet, I'd love to hear them. Now, I want to send a quick shout out to everyone who sent in stories about their own experiences. Thank you guys so much. Whether it's changing jobs, moving to a new city, just finding new ways to save money. Your stories and your feedback and your comments make this show what it is. Now, if you didn't get your comment read today, don't worry about it, guys. I see you, and I will try to include more next time we dive back into this topic or have updates on the topic. And if you've got your own thoughts, as I said, on anything we've covered today, keep them coming. Email john@canopicventures.com. Social media at SmorgasbordJK. Voice memos. Anything. Snail mail. I'll give you a mailing address. I want to hear from you guys. Now, after all of that, I am stuffed, and I hope you guys are stuffed as well. Because that's it for today's extra large, extra juicy, extra concerning episode of the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. If you got thoughts, again, as I said, on Carney's leadership, the tariff wars, on how all this affects you, Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK or leave a comment wherever you may listen. Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeart, etc. Don't forget, guys, our JFK assassination deep dive is coming soon. We might actually do it next week, depending on if there's another pressing issue that we would need to push it back another one. But if not, JFK coming next week, barring any other massive global shifts that we need to cover. So stay tuned for more conspiracy goodness and, of course, more wrestling themed episodes as well, and even a listener themed episode thrown in addition. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening or watching here on YouTube. This has been the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. I, of course, am John Knopick. Of course, in a world this wild, you've got to keep your mind open and your fork ready. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, take my advice, pull down your pants, slide on the ice. Have a great week. Stay safe out there, guys, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in. Adios.